I'm working at LogMeIn right now as a UX engineer, which is just a software engineer, but I work on design systems, and I would say my niche is geared more towards design and UX. So I'm building design systems and component libraries with React. I'm currently in the midst of developing our style guide using Gatsby, which is really fun because I love Gatsby. So that's my day job. And then in my spare time, I do a plethora of things. I am a panelist on the podcast JS Party. I have made a few Egghead courses in the past. I will continue to do so very soon. So that's on my plate. And then I like to blog too. So I'm going to be blogging for Ultimate Courses, and I've got some other fun stuff coming up as well.
Yeah, you have a lot of amazing material. It was actually really fun. I've seen some of your things come up over the internet over the last year, but kind of sitting down and actually like focusing on researching you have a lot of really great material. So I hope we can cover some
I appreciate
of that. Yeah. Oh yeah. No, you're very well spoken, very kind of like well thought out. Actually, where's the best place for people to find your writing? So we don't skip that in the end.
Yeah. So I migrated all of my tech blogs over to dev.to. So the dev platform, I was blogging on Medium. It's still live, but there's a lot of politics around that right now that I don't want to get into. So like I have some more like just general life blogs over there as well if you just want to read some of that. But yeah, I would say the dev.to site is the best place.
How do you like the dev.to platform?
I like it a lot. I love that it's open source. I also find that I get a lot higher engagement over there because everyone who's there is there for dev, right? So like on Medium, like you can post your things and potentially get curated, which is kind of neat. But like the audience on Medium it spans everything. And so the market for just tech blogs is a lot lower. So
do you find that you just put your tech stuff on there, or is it pretty open to like putting some of your personal stuff on there, or how does that work?
I put personal things on there too. I just love to write. Ever since I was little, I always said I was going to grow up and be an author. I read a lot and I love writing. And so I think that just kind of comes naturally. So yeah, I kind of like write about a lot of different things.
Nice. So before we get into the meat of the mentorship stuff, I have to ask you, you posted a tweet with a possum in it the other day, and it just like...
Oh, I did.
It just
Oh, I did.
blew up. So tell me, what's the story of this possum tweet?
Every time I look at it, it brings joy into my life. I had seen someone, I don't know, there was like someone did something similar. Like I saw the image floating around the internet because nothing these days is unique, right? And I certainly did not take a picture of a possum. Like I don't think I've ever seen a possum in real life. It's not on my list of things to do. So I found the image like floating around and I was like, yeah, that one. It kind of describes me at that moment. And every time I look at it, I just like giggle a little. So that's why I've pinned it. I'm like, every time I'm down, I'm just going to go look at my possum tweet.
Honestly, I kind of do the same. Like, I know it's pinned on her profile and it cracks me up every time.
Yeah, it'll stay there forever.
So what was the inspiration? So you found the image, and the image is a possum kind of like popping out of the trash can. And what was the caption for it again?
It was like, coworkers, I'm just going to refactor your code a little bit. And then me, don't touch my garbage. And like, it's so stupid. Like, it's really not even that funny. But then I sit and think about it and I'm like, oh God, like sometimes we do write garbage code. Like sometimes it is a dumpster fire and like, whatever. It happens to all of us.
I think it's insanely relatable because there's this thing that we don't talk about a lot, that we know that we've written code that isn't like aesthetically pleasing or like our favorite or like the greatest code that we've ever written, but we're also like super defensive about it at the same time. Like why do you think that is?
I don't know. I think anything that we create is an extension of us, irregardless of like how good or crappy it is. And so I made this random site the other day. It was randomcatgenerator.com because it was a free URL and it had cat in the title. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to buy that. It's like $5. And so I bought it and I made like, all it does is like generate a new cat picture from the cat API on click. And I was like, yeah, awesome. Perfect. Ship it. Done. And then I, of course, started getting pull requests to like make it better. And I'm like, but this is my garbage. Nobody gets to touch it. No, it's, I mean, Yeah, irregardless of how good it is, like I can write something and be like, oh God, this is shit. But like I'm still gonna ship it, and like no one's allowed to tell me that it's shit except for me. I don't know. We're just territorial by nature.
Yeah, that reminds me of a Ren and Stimpy episode, like from a long, long time ago. And it's like they were rifling through some guy's trash, and he was just super defensive about it. And he came to tears, and it's like, a man works hard for his trash, but he was just refused to let anybody else like near it.
Yeah, it's very true. I love it.
So I want to talk about mentorship today, and you have talked about this a lot on Twitter in your in your writing, and you have a really cool platform that you are developing, which we will talk about. Mm-hmm. What is the role that mentorship has had, or the lack of mentorship has had in your life as a developer?
Yeah, so where I'm at currently, it's funny because just this morning I had a meeting with my friend Khalil. He also works at LogMeIn, and he's really great. So shout out to him. We joined on the same day at LogMeIn, and he's a little bit more senior. And we just had a very real conversation where I was like, I feel quite lost with my next steps with my day job, which is normal. You hit blockers, but the difference is I'm on a design team. And so I don't have the support of other engineers on my direct team. And so we kind of mutually agreed to make this an established mentorship. He's always been there to give me like career advice or like technical advice, but I was like, you know what, like screw it. Like, let's make this legit because it's beneficial on both ends. And what that provided me was a safe place that I can get advice, candid advice without the bullshit of like being afraid to hurt my feelings. So constructive criticism in a safe space. But it also, I feel like, allows me to play around with having that safety net of like, if I get stuck or I need help, like I have someone there to guide me. So I would say emotional security is a big one with that. But it has not always been that way. So when I started at IBM, I struggled very hard. I came fresh out of college with an undergrad degree in computer science, and I had no idea what I was getting into because I was very sheltered in college. I think we all were. And so there's always this debate online of like, do you need a CS degree to be a legit developer? And I'm telling you, no, you do not, because I have one and I don't feel like it helped me. Because when I got to my first day, I had studied Java primarily. So I was really back end. I did database. I even did assembly language, and I get to my first day and it's front end and I'm like, oh, it's easy. The browser is easy. HTML. And then I show up and I'm like, fuck, I know nothing. I know nothing. It's all garbage. And so it was really hard because I was working a full-time job on top of trying to juggle, like, learning all these things. And I didn't have a mentor. And so I struggled with this for a year and a half. I cried a lot more than I should have. And then a year and a half in, I switched teams and I moved on to a design team, which is where I found my passion for design. But again, we ran into this problem of I didn't have other engineers. And not only did I not have someone to go to for questions or guidance, I wasn't seen as an equal in eyes of other engineers because I wasn't on a dev team. And so I had to consistently prove myself, right? So that's when I began thinking about mentorship. And you might have heard of Jason Langsdorff. He works at Gatsby now as a dev advocate. And I had this great idea to do an internal mentorship program at IBM. And so he was one of the people that worked with me that signed on and was like, yeah, this is a cool initiative. And kind of tried to get it off the ground at IBM, and it didn't really work. It just was not the right timing. But it was always something that I was passionate about because I didn't have a mentor. I eventually just messaged a guy at IBM that I had admired. He ran a lot of the education sessions and gave talks and whatnot. His name is Sam Richards. He now works at Google. So he's very proficient. And so I reached out. I was like, hey, will you mentor me? Like, I'm a little lost. And so we had a great mentorship session where it was project-based. So we were, I think it was around creating my portfolio, which is nice because then you have tangible goals that you can meet, right? So I was like, all right, I want to make my portfolio. I want to learn a little more about static site generators and some Node. And so each week we'd have milestones to hit. So that was my first real mentorship experience. And ever since then, I'm like, all right, well, what about other people like me, right? So I would say over the course of my, 4 or 5 years in the industry, like this mentorship, the idea that I have about mentorship has changed. It had gone from being purely just technical to expanding into career-based mentorship and and providing that additional emotional security net of sorts. So that was a long-winded answer.
No, it's a great answer. So I'm really interested by this idea of emotional security, because it seemed like there were a couple different types of mentorship that you mentioned. There was the kind of, your peers effectively on a team, and someone's providing you, someone with a little bit more experience is providing you kind of some emotional security, where they're a safe place where you can kind of come and say like, hey, what can I expect in a code review of this code, like kind of before it goes to code review.
Yeah.
And then there's also the like just kind of cold calling someone who is more established in the company that you admire, and having them kind of direct you in a career type of path. Now I'd like to kind of like tease those out a little bit, because it seems like the emotional security thing is something that anyone could kind of foster in a team, and probably should. What are some good ways to develop those types of relationships, or like ask your teammates for them?
Yeah. So one thing we did on my team at IBM was had a social contract within our team where we basically listed out some of our pet peeves. So like being late for meetings is kind of annoying, like send a message ahead of time. And it also gave us the ability to kind of call each other out in a safe way, right? So like we all sat there and agreed like, hey, if something bothers you, address it immediately. And like, we're all comfortable with that. So that's one thing that you can do. It's funny because moving to Germany, where the culture is a lot different, and I've done a lot of kind of research on how different cultures communicate, in certain aspects, Germans are a lot more straightforward, which can come off as abrasive. So learning that has been interesting. But then when we think about criticism in the United States in particular, we always have to wrap our criticism in, I'm not sure the right word, but like use words to kind of make it not seem as bad, but you also have to wrap it in things that are good. And this is so interesting to me because we spend a lot of time trying to curate exactly what we need to say to get this feedback across. So like, for example, if I didn't agree with something like my coworker presented, or like, let's say that they took credit for my work, be like, okay, like you did a really great job presenting, I wish that you had acknowledged me in it, but like, you still did a good job. That's how we would maybe give
like
feedback in America.
Sandwich, right?
Yes, exactly.
Or like a shit sandwich, I guess.
Yeah. And in Germany, you would just call them out and be like, hey, like, what was that? Like, you didn't give us any credit. Next time, maybe you should rethink that. So the culture thing is very different. And then you've got Asian cultures, which is fascinating because in Asia, from what I've read, they don't give constructive criticism, or they don't give negative criticism. They only positively compliment the things that they liked, and you have to read between the lines. It's a lot higher context. So this is all very fascinating, and I would recommend, if you work on a multicultural team, learn these things because it will help you communicate more effectively and give feedback in a way that's effective, but also like doesn't burn bridges. Like it'll foster better relationships.
Mm-hmm. Now, how does that play out in teams that are like rapidly like changing or developing? Because it seems like these are amazing things, but one of the challenges that a lot of people have is like people are always being added to the team or like shifted away from the team. Is this something that you just have to kind of get a critical mass around, and then as people come in, it's like that's just like standard? Or like how do you I guess continue those values out with your team?
That's hard. Because like part of me wants to say, treat people the way you would like to be treated. But the thing is, everyone's different, right? And so something that, so here's an example. Maybe let's say I don't clean up my GitHub branches after I've closed them, right? Like something dumb. But maybe that doesn't bother me, but it bothers my coworker. So like for me to sit here and say, treat people the way you want to be treated, well, that's not going to translate, directly. So I would say, in those situations where you have volatile team structures, if you have a problem with the way that someone is working or it's inhibiting your productivity, just say something. Say something one-on-one. Maybe start the conversation with like, hey, I would love to chat a little bit more. I have, something on my mind I'd like to talk to you about. Is now a good time? Do you want to schedule a time? And that way they're not walking into something blind. They're not being blindsided by it. But it still provides you that safe space. Never call someone out in front of a group of people. This has happened with me before, and it makes me feel really uncomfortable. So always do it one-on-one and address it in the moment, because the longer you let these things simmer, it's going to boil over at some point.
I really like this idea of kind of like peer mentorship and like everyone trying to like kind of push against each other, but like for the benefit of everyone, right? So you're not trying to be mean, not trying to be angry, but like let's all kind of like raise up as a team together. So now I want to talk about the other kind of mentorship that you mentioned, which is having someone that you have like sought out. What did that feel like as you were writing that email? Like you've identified the person that you want to have. And like, what did it feel like kind of like reaching out and asking for that help?
I mean, I think it's only natural to feel a little bit scared shitless. So here's my take on this, this angst that we have. We see people in the industry that we admire and we put them on a pedestal. And at the end of the day, we're all people. Like we all started at the same place. We're all gonna, end
in the same place.
People. Well, I didn't want to say it like that, but
it's fine.
Yeah,
it's
I couldn't finish that sentence. We're all going in the same place.
We're all going in the same place.
Damn it. Okay. So, it's true. We're just people, right? And so, yeah, some people you look up to in the industry, but we're just humans. There's no need to put people on a pedestal. Now, that being said, the mentee, so the person asking for this mentorship, is typically the one who should carry the brunt of the weight, because the mentors are giving up their time and their knowledge and expertise. So that being said, it's probably, and I made this mistake in the past, asking someone, hey, will you be my mentor, is not a great way to do it, because that's open-ended. They have no idea how much of a commitment that is. They don't know what kind of skills you want to work on. Yep. Maybe the skills you're looking to improve are not in their wheelhouse, right? So if you're going to approach someone, say, hey, I really admire your work. I have seen you blog here or your video here, and I want to improve these two skills over the next couple of months. Would I be able to so it depends on the type of mentorship. Do you want ad hoc? Do you want something you can just ask some random questions, maybe over Slack or something? Or are you looking for something involved, right? Mm-hmm. So be very clear walking into that, what your expectations are, and be conscientious of their time as well. And I think that you've got a good shot. What do you have to lose? You literally have nothing to lose. And that's my motto for life, over the past year, is what's going to happen? If they don't respond, I am no worse off than I was when I started. And if they do respond and they want to take me on, look at what I've just gained. So
yeah, absolutely. I have to say, as I think about it, people who have had the most success with me are ones who are like, hey, I just need a specific amount of time from you by this date, whenever you're available. If I can get 45 minutes for you to give me some feedback on this thing, and it's always yes, right? Because it's the time constraint is closed-ended. Right. There's a specific focus about hey, I think you provide some good feedback on this, and the success rate for those is so much better than hey,
so much better.
Could you talk with me once a week for the rest of eternity? No, definitely not.
Right. There's a reason you probably look up to these people, and it's that they do a shit ton of things, and they're very active, which also means they don't have a ton of time. Yeah. I had this conversation with Kent Dodds about kind of mentorship, and he is not the only one. I know a lot of people in the industry who are, pretty well known. They don't have a lot of time to devote, and so if they get these requests, it's just unfortunately it's not possible. But should you pose it as, hey, can I have 45 minutes on your calendar just to show you what I've done? So here's an example. I wanted to get more into CSS animations, and I was chatting with Sarah Drasner a little bit, and I was I don't remember what I said, but I think I was would you just be willing to look it over really quickly and tell me that I'm on the right track? Because I don't want to be giving false information to people as the truth. She was yeah, absolutely. We can set up a call. And she's one of the busiest people I've ever met, right? But posing it as, I'm going to do the heavy lifting. Can you just maybe help me out for this very small, minute task? Then your success rate goes up a lot.
I think that's really interesting too, the idea of you sharing something, right? And not wanting to, you don't want to misdirect people. And so people in those positions where they are training, where they are trying to share information, they're happy when other people are like kind
Yeah.
of joining the fold, and to be able to like make sure that you're on the right track is always, I think you're right. It's like something that people are really excited to be able to contribute to in a small way.
Absolutely.
Sorry. Okay, so
It's all
when
good.
do you think? Sorry, that's my brain kind of breaks every once in a while. When
all
do
good.
you think that people need mentorship the most in their career? Like early, middle, or late, or is it always important?
I think throughout the entire career, because I think your needs change, right? So when you're beginning, maybe you don't even know if you want to be front end, back end, design, etc. Maybe you need guidance to kind of like get your feet wet in a bunch of different places, but like you don't know where to start. So like if I want to be back end, do I want to go with Python or C++ or Java? Like I have no idea. Maybe that's a conversation to have with a mentor. Now where I'm at, I need very specific technical help. So I've been having a lot of problems with our build and continuous integration with Jenkins. Now, Jenkins is a disaster of a tool because don't even get me started. I can't. Yeah.
We'll save that for another episode.
God. Yeah. Okay. It's soul crushing. Yeah. But in any case, I'm having a lot of problems with it. And the biggest problem is that it's enterprise configured, right? So like I can't just Google my problem of like, how do I fix my deployment problem? So now I need a really minute technical mentor who can explain the ins and outs of this stupid tool to me. So I think that there's always going to be a need for mentorship, but I do think that the problem space changes.
Yeah. So that kind of brings something up for me. Do you feel like you should always have, do you think you should always have some, oh my gosh.
We're good. We got unlimited minutes. But
Okay. I don't. It's like
I can't sit here and tell you I'm a fan of Zoom. I don't think that's a secret. No offense.
Sorry, Makai. I started getting a bunch of alerts. So if you could just chop this out again, I'm going to start over. So that brings up a question for me is, do you have all of your mentors been strictly in the technical space, or is it kind of like a range of like having career mentors that maybe aren't technical, or maybe even managers in that space, and having, like you said, like very niche technical mentors to help you get through a specific problem?
Yeah, I fully encourage like people outside of your field to mentor you in general. For me personally, I need to get perspective, and it's hard to do that when you're on the ground level with someone. It's better to get a high level perspective from a different vantage point on certain things, right? So like, I don't know if anyone ever fully knows what they want to do with their career. Like I had that the other day where I was like, what do I want to be when I grow up? And so I think now I'm kind of transitioning into it, but for a while I struggled, right? Like before I found design systems or like realized that it was an actual thing, I was kind of lost a little bit. I'm like, well, maybe I want to do like animations. Like I'm really not sure. And so maybe getting perspective by talking to people in other disciplines can help with that. Another thing that I always thought I wanted to do was be a manager. I always thought I was going to go get my master's in business and then become a manager. And like, then I realized I'm poor and college is expensive. No, but I think having these people to give you that perspective is good. I've had I wouldn't call them formal mentors, but I've had a lot of allies in this journey who just give me guidance on, even if it's just sharing a story about a time they went through shit, right? Like it humanizes the whole 9 to 5 workday problems that seem really big at the time, but in reality, it's like, well, tomorrow's a new day, and we can all start over.
Yeah.
So.
This is something that I've been talking about with a bunch of friends of mine that like, I remember really early on, I'm going to go into story mode for a second, but like, I remember early on in my like work history, I had a job as, I was like a cashier at like a coffee shop or something. At the end of the day, I was the one who was like also like washing all of the dishes. And I remember complaining about washing the dishes. I was like, they should just have some kind of service where like someone like just goes through all the restaurants and like washes all the dishes and then like moves on to the next restaurant, and so we can whatever. And the guy who was a little bit older than me, who had like been in service industry for a while, he's like, dude, you're that service.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, like, yes, I am that service. And like realizing like my context was like through my lens of like, I'm super important and like I shouldn't be doing this shit work. But the truth
Yeah.
is that like I was not above that shit work. Like I was just getting into the
No.
field, and like I had to kind of come to a place for myself where I realized like this is exactly the level of work that I am capable of right now. And like if I want to get out of it, like that's totally
Yeah.
on me. And I think that is, sorry, I totally forgot what the thread was there, but like that story, I was totally reminded of that story, like in kind of being self-reflective of your work and having people kind of be able to communicate that to you of like, hey, your context is like this right now, but like the world at large is like bigger and you're just this like tiny little part of it. So like if you want to level up, like these are the ways that you get out of that is just super important and something that it's kind of hard to hear, right? Because you don't want to hear like, oh, like the role that you have on this team right now is the shit work. Like, so figure out how to get out of it.
Yeah, no, but I think that builds character and it, we all have to do it, right? And if you don't have to do it, you're going to be lacking certain skills that you need to survive.
Yeah.
I think I had a conversation with a coworker about ego because especially living in a foreign country, I think personality differences. I would say outspoken and I'm not a jerk. I wouldn't say I'm a jerk, but I do have opinions and I try to formulate those well and whatnot. But it can come off as an ego. And this is not something, he goes, would you be surprised if people told you had an ego? And I was like, yeah, absolutely, because I don't have that perception of myself.
Yeah.
He was like, well, it can seem like that sometimes. So what I had mistaken as confidence had actually, it could come off as having an ego, which I hate because I would say early in my career, we all have entitlement, right? We feel entitled to things because we haven't experienced the world. And so I don't remember like where I saw this, but it was a joke. It was like, what's the difference between a junior and a senior dev? It's like the senior dev knows that they suck at their job. Like, I mean, it's true. Like you need to go through the shit to realize like you are a small cog in this entire wheel. Yeah.
And like the sooner you can get to that revelation, it's like work almost gets like easier, right? Because you're like, oh yeah, like my thing isn't as special as I thought it was. Like I don't show up and like people aren't waiting for me to speak and tell them what to do and kind of have these huge revelations because of something that I know or don't know. It's like you just come, you show up, like you do the best you can, and then you move on with the rest of your life.
Exactly.
So I want to talk about alt methods of getting mentorship. So I know that I had a difficult time kind of early on in my career trying to find people that were able to like mentor me in a certain thing. And so I turned to like a lot of books and talks and conferences and etc. Do you find that there are some ways that people are doing those better, like maybe as teams, kind of like taking those further than just like kind of consuming a book on their own or like going to a conference, in isolation or etc. What are some hacks that people can do to like take information that's already out there and kind of apply it to their life as a mentor would?
Yeah, this is funny because I never thought of like books or blogs or videos as a type of mentorship. And then someone mentioned that to me and I was like, oh, like I guess it kind of is, but it's at scale and it's asynchronous. And so I would recommend. So one of the things that I do is I am involved in a local JavaScript meetup. And I think meetups are great because they're generally free. A lot of times I'll have pizza, which is just a win-win. And you can go and talk to people and get mentored there, right? Like you can meet people not only just in your community, but like in your problem space. So I would recommend meetups if that's something that's available to you. What else? I mean, I like listening to podcasts because I feel like people are generally like quite authentic on podcasts and you can get a lot of insight into I mean, we see people online and you only get so much interaction with them there, but podcasts I feel like are a little bit more authentic, like I just said. And I mean, in a team setting, maybe what you could do, like you could do these group sessions where like maybe you stay late one night and you get a pizza and you put on some conference talks and then have a discussion about it. See how you can bring in things like that into your day job. Or see how you can like repurpose some of these ideas and maybe take it in a different direction, but still use the principles that you had just learned. So I think doing things in a group setting is great because then it facilitates discussions and it facilitates, these cognitive like connections that maybe you weren't able to do on your own. So
nice. Now, I want to talk about what you're doing with Coding Coach because I think it's extremely exciting, and I want to talk about all of your ideas there. What is the big, hairy problem that you're trying to solve with Coding Coach?
That mentorship is not accessible to everyone. Be that in like time accessibility wise, so like not having someone who's willing to devote time to you, or monetarily, right? Some people can't afford a mentor, and the only way they can access a mentor is through an online platform. And all of these that I've seen have been paid. Well, that's not helpful for people who can't afford it. Maybe a student can't afford it, right? So all of the platforms that I'd come across, while they were very nice, they were paid, and which I understand, right? But the nice thing about Coding Coach is that all the mentors there donate their time, which means that they want to be there. They genuinely want to help each other. Yeah. And I think that's the root of a good mentorship is, genuinely caring about the people you're mentoring versus I'm collecting a paycheck. Not to throw shade on anybody for collecting money for donating their time. That's not what this is about. But I wanted to ensure that anyone in this industry could go and find someone, for a problem that they needed help solving, regardless of worrying about paying for it or, not knowing where to go.
What is a good time frame for a mentorship? Like, is that just kind of like up to the individual mentee and mentor? Or is there kind of like an ideal time that you find is great for a single relationship before maybe moving on to another?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually posted a Google Doc that has some mentorship guidelines in it. So if anyone's listening to this and they would like some more concrete information, feel free to go check that out. But it really all depends on the goals, right? So you should have goals before approaching a mentorship. And if my goal is to become an expert in JavaScript, I would like to have a plan, an action plan that I can check off list items as we go. And every few list items, let's reevaluate and discuss what worked well, what didn't go so well. Are we even making progress? Because if we're not making progress, then we can mutually end this and not burn a bridge there. If we're talking career mentorship, maybe ad hoc is the best, right? Maybe it's just as we need them. They're not something that necessarily needs to be scheduled. And so based on those things, I wouldn't say there's necessarily a time span or a life cycle that's maybe the most prominent. But I would say in general, like people need short-term help to grow. And once they grow, maybe they're in a different spot and maybe then they need, a different type of mentorship or a different mentor. And there's no shame in walking away from a mentorship. And that's one thing I also want to help with is making that a little less awkward.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, because when money's involved, that becomes extremely more awkward. And so like taking that barrier out of it is kind of like, hey, like this didn't actually like work. So let's part ways and I'm going to find someone else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What are some words of advice for someone who's going through your platform and like trying to find someone? How do they best find someone? Should they kind of try to find someone that they already like follow and admire and see if they're on the platform? Or are there good tools for finding someone who might be able to help them with the places that they're at right now?
So we currently just have Coding Coach Alpha out. And what that means is there's no database. It's literally just like you can use our CLI tool to add yourself as a mentor at the moment, and it gets populated into a JSON file and propagates to the UI. We're in the midst of building this beta version that has a fully fledged database that'll have a great UI where you can actually like create these mentorships and track goals and whatnot. So that's in the works. But for right now, you can go to mentors.codingcoach.io, and we have like over 200 something mentors, which is, it kind of blows my mind, to be honest. I think anytime your vision or your dream is coming to life, like it just kind of like scares you a little bit in a good way. And
Were
so,
you worried
yeah,
that
so
it would
if you
just
want
be like 5 people up there and you're like, oh.
God, I'm in charge of this. Yeah, adult things. So yeah, I would say go and we have technology filters, so you can go put in the like, hey, awesome. I need a JavaScript one, and you can go search by geographic location and stuff like that. And at some point, we will also on the full site we'll have like this capacity indicator. So if a mentor already has too many mentees, like you'll be able to see that right away, nice. And so your rate of rejection will be a little bit less, right? But I always joke that this kind of started out as like Tinder for mentorships because like, you know, that's kind of what we were going for, but like in a non-creepy way, basically just keeping it as simple as possible, right?
I like it. I like it.
Yeah.
So at what point in a career should someone start thinking about offering their time as a mentor or offering their experience as a mentor? Is it earlier or later than you might think?
I think it depends on the subject. So like everyone has something valuable to offer. You always have a unique vantage point, but I would say if I just read like one W3 Schools article about JavaScript, like maybe you're not in a place to mentor JavaScript yet. But I think once you have this like inner peace when thinking about a subject area and maybe being like, I don't want to say tested, right? But if someone were to ask you a question about a technology or a framework or whatnot, how comfortable are you answering those? Like, can you answer them? It's not necessarily even about knowing the answer. It's about knowing how to find the answer and having problem solving skills. So I think there's no great answer to this because it's not a tangible answer. I think it's you kind of know internally. But I would say like in terms of career advice or just advice in general, everyone has something unique to offer. And so don't discount yourself just because you've only been here a few years. I've only been in this industry professionally for 5 years, maybe 6 years. And I still feel like I have no idea what I'm doing. So, it goes to show that like you never, like you can look at someone who's been in the industry 10 years and yet they have things that they would like to be mentored on. Right. So, I think it's an internal conversation you need to have with yourself about, am I ready to take on that responsibility of helping someone in their journey?
That's one thing that, going back to what you mentioned about going to meetups, I found really helpful is that you can get a pretty good gauge of where you're at in relationship to people around you and kind of get a sense of like, oh, I actually know this topic. Because like you said, we're all looking at the horizon, right? We're all looking at these superstars and thinking like, oh, well, I'm not there yet. But when you go to a meetup, there's a lot more people who are kind of like just about like where you're at, especially in your, like seeing them in your geographical location. And to be able to kind of get that, like you said, being tested a little bit and see like, oh, like they all have questions about this thing that I actually know about. So maybe I could start teaching on that thing because there's obviously people who are like further behind me than that.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And I've gotten emails from people asking me to mentor them in Node. And I'm like, hey, I don't really work much with Node. So like, you're probably better off finding someone who isn't. I don't think there's any shame in that. Right. Like if you're not comfortable doing it, like I would say just own up to it. There's no shame. So
so that brings up an interesting question for me. Like, do you feel like people should specialize early on in their career or kind of go more like general?
I don't know because I've talked a lot about being like a T-shaped developer. So having like one area that you're very well versed in or comfortable in and having branches off on either side to a couple of areas that you want, you really enjoy. Maybe you're not an expert in. So like I would say my expert level skills are in front end development, but I also really enjoy UX and I know some, back end work as well. So I would say, if you're just starting out, I suggest kind of get a feel for all the different things out there because it'll help you understand what you're passionate about and specialize in the thing that you're passionate about because when you enjoy something, you're more likely to teach it better or enjoy your work more. And the goal, in my opinion, is not to collect a paycheck. I think that's a good byproduct of being invested in something mentally. But find the thing that you enjoy. You're going to be doing this for the majority of your adult life, so you might as well enjoy it. So I would say get your feet wet in a lot of things. Find what you like, and then take on some deep vertical knowledge on it.
Awesome. Where do people go if they want to get involved as either a mentor or a mentee for coding coach?
So you can go to codingcoach.io. We've got a little bit of info on there. To become a mentor right now, there's no process. There will be like a small form that you fill out with your profile information moving forward. But right now you just use the CLI tool and it opens a pull request automatically. So you can go to our GitHub repository from, our main site. You can get there. Also, the Slack organization is great. We've got like over 2,000 people in it, and
Nice.
the conversations, if you're just looking to like get really quick answer on something, you don't necessarily need a mentor, like get in the Slack group org and see what's going on there. Lots of fun people there. And to be a mentee, there's no qualification, right? You can go right now to mentors.codingcoach.io to find someone, or just like join the Slack org and like you can get help there.
Nice. Now, is there anything that we didn't cover today on the topic of mentorship or coding coach that you would like to leave us with today?
Maybe don't get discouraged if it takes a little while to find a good mentor or to find a mentor, because it's hard. I'm not going to lie. It's not something that generally comes easy. We're trying to make it easier. But in our platform specifically, like we still lack skill sets in different areas. We're gaining momentum. So if the skill set you're looking for isn't on our site yet, check back soon or message me directly. I'm happy to like maybe try to make a connection with someone. But yeah, just don't get discouraged. We're there to help. And, if there's anything we can do, like just reach out.
Awesome. Now, where can people find out more about you and your possum memes?
That's a great question. I'm all over the interweb, and I do like to post funny things. Well, I think they're funny. I don't really know if anyone else does, but I think the possum was a hit, so
It was definitely
it's not impossible. Dad jokes. No, feel free to find me on Twitter. I feel like I'm most active there. I generally just respond to almost every single DM that I get, especially if you pose it as like a question. If you DM me hi, I probably won't respond because it gets lost in like the ecosphere of like highs. But feel free to send me a message. Like I genuinely respond to everyone, and I'm always happy to help.
Awesome. Well, Emma, thank you so much for your expertise on mentorship and giving us some great tips on how we can get it, what different types there are. This was really fascinating to kind of like suss out the different types of mentorship and like how they can help you on your career. Really appreciate your time. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I had a great time.
Awesome. We did it.
Yay!
Thank you. I really appreciate everything that you said and all the places we took it. I think it's going to be super helpful to people. I know that at least the audience that like participates in the conversation is kind of like very early phase career. Mm-hmm. So I think this is going to be really helpful to them, and hopefully we can kind of add some more test cases to your coding coach site.
Yeah, for sure. I'm excited that you asked me to be on because I'm always looking for new podcasts. But I guess like how did you even start this? Because you got like a massive following, and this is kind of like the legit React one, right? So like, how did that even happen?
That's a good question. I think actually I attribute it to Michael Jackson restarting it.
Oh, okay.
So like a really long time ago, a friend of ours named Zach. He started this whole thing, and he was like, so Zach Silveira, he started the whole thing. He like snatched up like a lot of like prime React real estate, like right off the bat. So like he got like React.js News and like React Podcasts. And so he started all of these things, but then they kind of like trailed off. And the podcast just kind of sat dormant for like a couple years. I think it was like 2015 maybe, where like the first episodes were. And Michael Jackson of React Router and React Training hit Zach up, and he was like, hey, can I, kind of like revive this thing? And so he started it, but then he kind of was like, this doesn't really actually fit into like my business model. It's a lot of work. Do you want to do it? And I was like, no, I don't actually. Like, it's way too much work. I don't have enough time.
And here I am.
But I wanted to see it keep going, and so here it is. But he gave it that initial boost, I think, kind of revived it and got a lot of the initial Twitter followers and like interest in the topic. And so it's been super fun. It's been fun to kind of like carry that on, and I have been really overwhelmed by how many people we have listening, and how easy it's been to get some really interesting people to talk to. For me, I just like talking to people, and so it's been a really fun way to do that and get to meet people that are in the industry that I haven't met yet. So yourself included. So yeah, it's been fun. I like it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I really enjoyed our conversation. I think you had a good balance of like having notes down, but like just being like having a conversation. Because I've been on podcasts where it's literally like they read a script, and I'm like, I think that was my first one I was on, which is fine, like if that's their style. But I'm more of like a let's play on the words that we say kind of person. So.
Yeah, it is an interesting balance, because I know for me it's like I stress out before literally every call. Like, because I'm like, because you never know. Like sometimes like people do like talking, like just having a conversation, but then other times like you got to drag like literally every word out of somebody.
I mean, we are engineers, so like to a certain extent, I get it, but
yeah, right. Because like sometimes like, oh no, yes, that's correct. You're like, yeah, great. Well, we're only 5 minutes in, and I am out of questions.
Oh, fuck. Who was the one that surprised you the most? Like that you had a way better time with than you thought, or a worse time than you thought?
Oh man.
I won't make you answer the worst one because that's kind of mean, but like who was like one that was like, oh, this is a lot of fun?
I got to talk, I forgot his last name, but I got to talk with Aaron, who is a blind developer. We haven't actually aired the episode yet. And he was a friend of Ryan Florence, and he made the introduction. And I was super nervous about that call because I didn't want to be at all like demeaning or like disrespectful. And so like I had to do like a lot of prep and like ask a lot of questions about his comfort talking with the conversation. And I wasn't really nervous about it for like how the conversation would go, but I was nervous about like me saying something stupid.
Like politically incorrect.
Yeah. And he was so great and so like kind and like giving in that conversation. And I feel like I was most nervous for that one. And once we started, it just felt so natural. And I was like really grateful for his perspective, and I learned a ton. So I think that was one of the most, kind of like most nervous to like easiest conversation that we had so far. So that was good.
Oh, that's nice. I can't wait to hear that one. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, it was really fascinating, especially from an accessibility perspective, like to have someone who is like working in all of these tools like every day and actually has that disability was really because we talk about it a lot in theory. It's like, it's someone
I know. Marcy Sutton made this comment during one of her talks that she gave. She was like, we can all pretend to empathize with blind users, but we don't know what they go through. We're just an ally for them. And also, we all have the same questions, but nobody wants to ask it for fear of, insulting someone. But at the same time, like, we need to be informed. So I think that that's going to be very important.
Yeah. So I'm super excited to air that one. When it goes out, it's going to be really, it's going to be fun for me. Yeah. So how many of these have you done? Are you starting to do more of them? I know that you just gave your first conference talk, so it seems like you're kind of like spreading out a little bit.
Yeah, this is probably one of the last podcasts I'm going to be on because I feel like I've done so many, which is so great. But it's in the beginning when you're trying to get started, you say yes to everything. And now that I'm kind of gotten started and I still say yes to everything, I'm like, oh God, I'm so overwhelmed and burning out. No, but I think I'm going to slow down on the podcast requests now that I'm a full-time JS Party panelist, and like I'm starting a couple of my own too. So now I'm like, all right, so that niche is filled. But conference talks September and October are literally just traveling. I mean, like I'm doing, I think 9 this fall. And so like I'm quite overwhelmed by that.
Yeah, that's
it's a good thing. I mean, it's good. It's just a lot.
Yeah, no, that's an insane amount. I think I did 3 my first year and doing them, and I was like, I can't do more than 3. 3 is my max.
I mean, I'm repeating talks, which is good. So like, it's really only 2 talks I have to make. But I mean, I don't know if you know, but like this all started last September. Like this is very new to me. Like I didn't grow a following. I haven't had this for a long time. It's very short. And so like, I'm trying to like come to terms with all these new opportunities, which are amazing, but holy crap.
Yeah. It's coming at you fast, right?
Yeah.
Are both of your talks surrounding design systems, like your React.js ladies talk, or?
Yeah, kind of. But they're going to be a little more technical, I would say. So
Cool.
I think I'm going to do some live coding, making a style guide with Gatsby starters.
Awesome.
And I was going to do one on building like robust component libraries with React, but it depends on the time frame because like 20 minutes is way too short to go into that. So we'll see like what's going on, but it'll be around, design systems.
Awesome. And so at LogMeIn, you're doing all that in React, or do you have other? Mm-hmm. Cool.
Yeah, React. I worked in Vue at IBM, which I also love Vue a lot. So I would love to be able to build them in both, but like my brain can't like separate the concerns. So like I really have to be careful not to screw up my my skills.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We have that problem. We have a really like long running platform. So I think we've been in business for like 13 years now. And so there's still a lot of like the original code floating around. And so we're doing a lot of stuff. The components are in React, but we're doing all of the like styling abstractions in CSS because we still have like a lot of like Rails stuff. And there's like all these like fringe ideas of like, oh, like maybe we could do like Phoenix or whatever. And so it's like, that's like kind of been the best fit for us is like having it all in CSS. So we can attack all of our platforms. So I definitely don't envy the challenge of like having multiple platforms that you are trying to do this for.
Yeah. I mean, you really can't do it alone. Like you really need a team to help you. So that's a learning process.
Yeah. Well, do you have any talks that are bringing you out to the West Coast of the US?
Not the West Coast. No, I'm going to be at All Things Open in North Carolina, and then I'll be in Boston for a conference. But we do have an office in California, so like I was just in Santa Barbara not too long ago. There's a chance I'll probably be back. So if I am, where are you located?
I'm in San Diego.
Oh, okay, that's not super close.
Not super close, but I'm always looking for excuses to go up to Santa Barbara because I freaking love that place. So.
Yeah, and we always get to stay at the Ritz-Carlton, which of course is like the best thing. Yeah, oh yeah.
Awesome.
So I don't hate going.
Cool. Well, I will let you get on with your day. I know that it's probably been a long one already. So thank you so much for your time. It was a real pleasure meeting you. So I'm glad that we did this.
Fun. Thank you. Yeah, me too. I can't wait to hear it. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.